Hello, Joan.
Hi, Christi.
I'm so delighted that you're one of the first people to come on the podcast with me because I've known you for so long and we have such a rich experience together, just talking through all kinds of things, women in leadership and at the home and spirituality. And we've facilitated the Awaken course together on the beach. So it's going to be a wonderful conversation with you.
Thank you, Christi, and thanks for having me. This is very, very much an honor from you, and I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, so what is most on your mind to talk about today?
I would want to talk about women in leadership, especially because that is something that has magnified ever since I met you. And coaching for me has been that key that I have always been looking for. And now I don't feel threatened to take up leadership. If anything, I look for it, not positional leadership, but opportunities to lead. And so that's what I would want to talk about.
Wow. That's exciting. So how did coaching change what's possible for you in leadership?
I think first and foremost, it redefined leadership. And I remembered this last night as I was speaking to a much, much younger friend of mine. I think we have like maybe a 20-year-old age difference. And so as we were speaking with this young man, he's very passionate about leadership. And I asked him a question that I felt like I was asking myself. Who are you without leadership opportunities? And I remembered that when I met you, Christi, that is a question I was wondering about. I had just resigned from my job because I felt I wasn't getting fulfilled. And I felt I didn't want to do a job just to pay bills. And I was in the space where I was wondering, who am I? And how can I first and foremost lead me before I can lead anyone else? And you introduced coaching to me. And I would say coaching for me was the key that allowed me to lead myself. And over, I would say, how many years now? We met in 2012, right? Yes. So over the years, the keys that I've received through coaching have helped me not just lead myself, but lead my children, lead in my home, lead in my family, and a lot more at work.
Yeah, so you're looking back through many years of evolution. It's really interesting because I feel like leadership, especially as a woman, I'm still learning so much now. So I'm really kind of laughing myself when you say that you learned a lot from me 12 years ago, because I was like, I didn't actually know anything 12 years ago. I still don't know that much. But anyway, just thinking like even taking leadership to launch Awaken, it was a huge just a whole worldview shift for me. I think both of us have been raised in, with the Christian background. And for me, a lot of that, I remember when I was 22 or something, I was getting my first job and my mom visited me and she was like, "Oh, I don't know. Corporate is not for women. It's such a dog eat dog. And I don't know that you should really be doing that. And your place is at the home and all of that." And I remember, not buying into that whole thing, but still, I wrote curriculum for 3 different coach training schools before I started Awaken. And I just kept writing them for men who thought that they were the natural CEO of the company. And I thought so too. I'm like, okay, if we're going to have a partnership, I'm going to do a bunch of the work and they're going to have their name on it and it's going to be their company and they're going to get most of the money. And it just felt like that was the right thing to do, which now I'm like, huh,
Mm-hmm.
how fascinating. That does not seem true to me anymore. But it took me kind of getting angry at one point to finally step out and say, you know what, there's things I want to teach and that I do know. And I actually know a lot more, not to be, I mean, these are really great guys I was working with, but nothing against them. I just happen to know a lot more about coaching than they did. But there was still something that, I've had my MCC for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is it about me that I'm just letting the men take the leadership when I have a lot more experience and knowledge and things to share in this particular domain. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested. Yeah, I'd love to hear what it's been like for you as a woman to take leadership.
I resonate with your story, Christy, because that's just how I grew up thinking. I'm here to follow. And so I would say a lot of my life has been characterized by shying away from those opportunities. And yet I'm so grateful for my husband, Daniel, who has consistently told me, come on, why is God sending those opportunities your way? He knows your struggles. He's not lost to that. Why wouldn't you take them up and trust him? And when I step into those spaces, I hear his voice cheering me on, telling me, just step in and be yourself. Don't go and lead like you've seen others lead. Just go and lead as yourself. And I think that's where I found the practical way to apply that in coaching, because I have come across different people who struggle that like I do, and therefore choose to shy off. When I started doing coaching, the first thing that I learned is, how do I discover who am I? And how do I get comfortable in that space? What's my style? What are my values? And that has just been the game changer. And it's been interesting to work alongside men and see how beautiful that is. I mean, my mom says, I live in a dormitory of boys because it's my husband and my two boys. And we have a homeschool tutor who's another young man. And for me, the gender balance and dynamics just bring out the wonder and the mystery of the divine, bringing forth leadership. And so for me, I look at leadership as situational. And that makes it a whole lot different. So that is not who is on top of who. It is who is providing the direction. And I think the other thing I would want to bring out is, in my early years in the corporate, I looked at women who would lead, and they suddenly changed. They were abrasive. And I thought, I don't want to show up like that. But now, many years later, and as I turned 45 this year, I now identify with what was going on. The pressure is real. I'm like, I'm here, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I am a leader in the corporate, and now I have people looking up to me. I'm dealing with my own emotional issues with menopause and stuff. It's a lot. And so those days I looked at them and wondered, why are you behaving like that? And today I look at my fellow women and I'm like, we can do this. We can handle all this and we can show up as the gentle people we are. We can be firm. We don't have to shout. We can bring in emotion, intuition, and logic, and we can lead with that. And I see that's beautiful. I've seen it work. It doesn't always do, but I learned through it.
Yeah, I experience you as such a gentle, kind, warm person to be with. And I just remember, yeah, like 12 years ago when we were talking, and even more recently, you were constantly getting leadership opportunities. It was like they would follow you and stick to you. Like you couldn't get rid of them if you tried. You're like, hey God, fork some over to the other men in my family. I do not need them all. But people just saw you as a natural leader. And I find that so fascinating that um, even when that happens, it can be so much a need, probably women in our generation, um, who've been raised with it so deeply ingrained that we're not supposed to be leaders, that it still took the voice of your husband, Dan, the voice of God, who you're using male pronouns for, to tell you it's okay. Um, I know for my husband Ben also was a big support in like, why are you not starting your own company? You are frustrated not being able to shine as fully as you're meant to. Um, just letting someone else be the boss, or not even letting them, but almost like making them be the boss when it was just not right. And
Yeah.
for me too, there was a spiritual component. I remember when I was living in Kenya, there was a 70-year-old nun named Sister Pat, who I used to meet with every month for about 5 years. And I just struggled and struggled. I kept coming in and being like, I'm just frustrated because I really felt like I wasn't supposed to be a leader because that wasn't my role as a woman. And she just kept looking at me like, no, you are. This is part of your nature. And and then there was this one, and I couldn't quite get it. She kept telling me that over and over again, like, you're meant to be in charge of yourself and responsible for yourself and leading whatever is put in your life to lead. And I still kept kind of, it was almost like there was an internal battle. And then there was this Canadian coach named Suzanne Stevens who came through town. And so I was living on that university campus, which you probably remember, in Karen, just outside of Nairobi. And she came through, and there were about 200 of us in a room, and she put us in groups based on our personality tests that we had taken. And so I was the only person, other than this really loud, obnoxious guy who I didn't like very much, who was also like 6'4". I mean, he was towering over everyone, a really big, tall guy with a loud voice. And it was only the two of us out of all 200 people in this one quadrant called the driver. And I almost ran out crying. I was just like, I'm such a horrible person. I felt like I'm a woman. I'm alone. I'm not supposed to be here. And that coach saw me, and she actually came out after the session was complete, and she took me aside and she was like, I see your tender heart. That was the only word she said to me. And I just like, started crying. I'm like, you mean you can be this, like, the one person or the two people in the room who are the drivers who make things happen and are meant to be leaders, and you can have a tender heart. It's not an either or. And you don't have to put yourself in the same category as the abrasive, loud, big, tall, strong. We're allowed to be women and gentle and tender and soft and loving and strong leaders who have the vision. I think you've mentioned you got a big vision and you're meant to carry it out.
That is true. That is so sweet, Christi. That is so sweet. I love that combination, that it's not either or, it's both.
Right. And I almost feel like it's 10 times both. for women.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Mm-hmm.
softer and warmer and more loving you are,
Mm-hmm.
the more you're also boundaried, clear, strong, brave. And you can't let either side, you can't let the side down either way. You just have to keep showing up tender and willing to set the vision, and then more tender and even more willing to set the vision.
Correct.
Ooh.
It is a juggling game, and I love what you're doing with your hands, because that's it. And I think what I see in that and what I've experienced is many times we feel like we need to strive to perfection, where both are always at par, which doesn't happen, at least not in this life. And therefore, at any one point, one is down, one is up. And the whole point of awareness then comes in, the beauty of vulnerability, which comes through for us as women so naturally comes in. And therefore, we don't struggle to say, I dropped the ball there. I catch myself, I pick it up, and I keep going. And I love that, just the authenticity. And I've noticed many people identify with leaders who are authentic, who are human. You're not Superman or Superwoman who showed up in the morning. It is, I'm struggling, but that doesn't stop me. I'm learning. I'm becoming better. Every day is brighter. And I think that's where then the leadership comes in, because it's the environment we create that influences like-minded people and tells them, you can do it. You don't need to do it like me. You can do it like you. And that's what I've admired watching you, Christi, and just learning through Awaken Coach Institute. Please. Thank you. This has been a gift for my corporate life. Thank you.
Wow. One of our other faculty members, Baleen Grotrian, she's one of quite a few people in our community who are also Clifton Strengths coaches. And she did some Clifton Strengths work with our whole team. And it was really fascinating because my top strength was maximizer. And I thought, really? I couldn't quite get that one because I'm not always, I don't need things to be 100% kind of stuff. And so I was like, maximizer. But when I read the description for me and how it worked out with some of my other strengths, it was really about you invite the best skills of everyone. You don't want people doing stuff they hate. You don't want people slogging through. You do want to invite their genius to really flourish and shine. And I think that's something, like you were just saying, we do as women. And when I did my training with Brene Brown's organization, one of the biggest learnings for me was that the behavior that most highly correlates with trust is asking for help.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm hearing from you. It's not, people don't trust you more when you have a lot of bravado and false confidence kind of thing. But like, even for this podcast, I'm not a techie kind of a person, and it's not something that I would have done myself. But Evelyn Wolf was like, yeah, I can contract with Riverside and buy a subscription with whatever it is, Apple Podcasts and Podbean and Spotify, or I don't know what she did. I don't know or care. It's just, it works. And here's the podcast out there. And she did all the tech, and she invites guests and help them figure out how to set up their microphones and everything. And I just don't have to know how to do that. And yeah, and I feel like that's a big part of the freedom and joy of leadership, and particularly women's leadership, is that we're not expected, like the patriarchy isn't expecting us to be on our white horse rescuing and saving all the time. like it is with men. And so I think in some ways society does make it easier for us to just be like, I don't know how to launch a podcast. But I want a podcast and somebody knows how to launch it, and Evelyn can do it, and she's doing a great job producing it. And anything else I don't like, I'm not very good with numbers. I don't know if I'm dyslexic or what, but numbers, I think I can count to 10 most of the time, but that's about it. And so as soon as numbers get involved, I'm like, we shall hire someone for that.
I love that, Christi. I really do, because isn't that amazing that then we enable people to work in a body? I mean, and thinking about spirituality here, I'm always fascinated that when I look into my faith, that God doesn't seem to be in the business of raising superhumans. He creates these very interdependent organs so that today my foot can't decide, okay, now I don't need the hand, so I'm gonna eat and I'm gonna do the thing. And I'm like, what is this about us, especially in the corporate space, that makes us feel I need to step on everybody else to go where I'm going? And I'm like, there's enough space for all of us. We can rally together. We can nurture each other as we go. And I love what you said. You don't need to know how to set a podcast, because Evelyn needs something to do. And if you won't provide the opportunity, then you're stressing yourself and denying Evelyn. And I feel like just that mentality. And I guess that's why God also gave us a responsibility to just keep life going. We are life givers. And for me, that's just amazing. And when I look at leadership, therefore, is we carry the seed. We don't originate the seed, but we give life. We nurture. We give life. We notice. We call out. And so what I hear from you is also then our gifting to identify potential and nurture it and provide opportunity for it. And for me, that's leadership.
Little. Oh man, so many rich analogies going on in what you're saying. I love the biblical metaphor you used about the parts of the body, and like your eye can't say I don't need the spleen, your kidneys can't say I don't need the ears. Like we do need each other. And then you're talking about life-giving, and that was really bringing to mind. I was trying to see if I had this book handy. I think I actually have it in my beach bag right now. There's a book called Belonging, and it has a really lovely metaphor about how an apple tree is so generous in giving away its fruit. So anyone who passes by, be it a human or a monkey or whoever, a bird, anyone who wants to eat an apple, the tree is like, here you go. I'll make more. Take all you want. And so it's being so generous. And at the same time, it's being altruistic, because the monkey will take that apple and drop the seeds somewhere else and create another apple tree. And so the generosity is generative. It's creating more life. And so you're talking about seeds and how women and we're the life-giving force. And I think that's part of what makes generosity so much fun for us, is that it's never I was too generous, so now I don't have as much. It's the more I give, the more proliferates in the world.
That's beautiful, Christi. And isn't that amazing that for us to be generous, then there's a belief system behind there that I don't run out, that I'll always have enough to give. And why would we believe that we have? Because we are channels. God gives to us And he expects us to be a channel, not to hold to ourselves. And one of the other things that I came across in coaching was the scarcity mentality. And I thought, interesting. I had never thought about it that way. And so the generosity comes from a place of abundance, that we can abound with our time, we can abound with our patience, we can abound with our listening. I have loved to learn how to listen. And especially when in the corporate space, you may not exactly think somebody's adding value. The tendency is just to shut them down. But there's so much wealth in listening. First, not even for me who's listening, for the person speaking, because they need an opportunity to hear themselves. And I've realized that in leadership, the greatest gift is allow the person to talk, answer to the powerful questions, and they feedback themselves. And I think that's the generosity, that can I be generous with just myself, with my time, with my space. And of course, that exists within very healthy personal boundaries, which is another big lesson that I learned from you.
Oh, I'm sure we learned it together. Yeah, boundaries has been a huge topic. And coaching is just a lovely way to learn to relive our metaphors. As you were talking about abundance and growth, it was reminding me of a coaching session that I had maybe in like 2012. It's been a while. But I really wanted to get healthy and I wanted to start juicing. And so I bought myself a juicer, and then I couldn't bring myself to make any juice because I was so appalled at the amount of waste, because I would put like 15 carrots into the juicer and then I would get this little thing of juice and then a huge pile of waste. And I just thought, I can't waste so much food. And so in this coaching session that I did, my coach asked me to imagine an abundance of carrots. And that night I had a dream that my entire kitchen was just like someone had just dumped a huge truckload of carrots and I couldn't even make my way through this enormous pile of carrots. And how was I ever going to ever find a way to give them away, use them? There's so many carrots. And then I went into my back garden and looked at my carrot patch, and there were so many carrots. And because in one carrot, there's thousands of carrot seeds.
Right.
So if you were ever to use that many seeds, you would have way more carrots than the whole earth could ever consume. And so I went out into my garden in my dream, and there were just thousands of carrots in the soil, and I was having to weed some of them out so that each one had enough space. And they just kept coming and coming and coming.
Wow.
More and more carrots. And so that kind of snapped me out of it. And I was able to just put a whole bunch of carrots through the juicer and then take the carrot, the pile of dry carrot bits and throw them back into the garden as fertilizer. And I was like, there is no shortage of the number of carrots that can be produced from a single carrot. And that whole metaphor grew and grew with coaching as well, because sometimes when people are trying to sell coaching, I need to get my name out there in front of 2 million people and get 50,000 clicks and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, coaching is a slow, life-giving, personal process. And if I am able to serve 30 people in a year and you're able to serve 30 people in a year, it's going to be this really deep, rich, life-giving thing that happens, and both of our lives are going to be changed. And so we don't actually need 50 million followers or 50,000 followers or whatever. We just get to serve a few really well. And, you working in the company that you work for, I'm sure just you being that woman leader who is kind and boundaried and thoughtful and asks for help and all the good, gentle, wonderful, firm ways of being at work.
Mm-hmm.
These women 20 years younger are going to see that and say, that's what's possible.
Mm-hmm. I like the bit of that's what's possible, because it's really creating possibilities. And we can speak about possibilities, but I think we create possibilities when we live out the possibilities so that people can see what's possible and they can see all these beautiful things. They can also see the difficult things and they can see us rise up again and know it is possible to rise up. One of the things that I've remembered is when I was learning how to swim, and it was so difficult for me. And I remember this young man who was our tutor then told me, listen, this is not as complex as you think. Let's just do a simple experiment. Just go to the deep end of the pool, and I'm going to be inside there. Just jump in. And I looked at him, I'm like, that's called committing suicide, young man. And he went like, seriously? I'm stronger than you, so I can literally lift you up if it came to that. And he was like, just jump in and then let's have a conversation. And I thought, okay, seriously, I can trust you. I jumped in, and of course he's floating and he was waiting for me up there. And when I came up, he told me that's all you needed to know. You just need to know that you are able to come out. That's all you need to know. And then you can swim. And I think that ties back to where we started on the issue of trust. That people just need to know you have what it takes to come up. You know how to come up. So we don't need to fear to fail. We don't need to fear to make a mistake. We know how to come up. So we can swim. We can be the leaders in our homes. We can be the leaders in our corporate environments. And we can be the leaders in business like you are doing, Christi. Starting the new podcast, bringing together the Awaken community. I really love the courage. And I want to cheer you on as I cheer on myself and as I cheer on our listeners, so we can lead as women and lead with gentleness and with firmness.
Absolutely. I love you're just bringing powerful analogy after powerful analogy. Your metaphors are amazing. Like, you could tell somebody 50 times, it's okay to be a leader and a woman. And we all kind of know that logically, but there's something about jumping into the pool and feeling your body float and feeling that water does hold you up, that then you know it. You know it.
That's true.
Yeah. And I've seen you be the boss of yourself. You've got one kingdom that you've been given for this lifetime. And you're the ruler of that kingdom so beautifully. And when you do rule your own kingdom well, you're given more. You've been given your kids, you've been given your team at work, that when you lead yourself well, you lead other people well. And it's not an either or, it's not a power over. It's really helping the flow and the direction of the team, and inviting good things from everyone, inviting wisdom and love and skill, competence from the whole team.
That is so true. And to your garden of carrots, that invitation for me looks like a rich garden. It's using that waste as the manure to create an environment where we can nurture more carrots. And then we don't have to be afraid we'll run out. And we can do that in our corporate space. We just need to consistently create that environment that you've described. And that seed will nurture more and more people.
It reminds me of a conversation I had a few days ago. There was a coach who was wanting to start a group program in a company, and she was visibly a bit anxious. And we talked it through, and she had at least a whole day's worth of material that she wanted to cover in 90 minutes. And so it's just the joy of coaching is that you don't actually have to do it's like you just have to be the water that people can float in. Like people do float, and it's almost just saying, hey, I'm inviting you to jump on in. It's not, you're not pushing anybody's feet for them or doing anything for them. You're just the water.
Yes.
Like, come on, take a leap. Here's your invitation. And what's that like for you now that you've leaped in? And that's a lot of what group coaching is about. Just creating these experiences where people jump in and they recognize their own strengths and they recognize what they can contribute and they know it because they love it.
Yes. And they love it because people want to be in a world that they create. People don't want to be dropped in a world. So I love that if we are the water that consistently holds them up and lets them know you don't need to do anything. You have what it takes. Just nurture who you are. Just show up as yourself. You're gonna float. And I feel that's our responsibility to ourselves and to those around us, to consistently just be the water that lifts everybody up as we go.
I love that. I feel like that's a good way to end our conversation for today. With your words, be the water that lets people know that they can float.
Awesome. I love it, Christi. I will carry that away with me. And I will remind myself when times are tough, at work, at home, I just need to be the water that holds people up and lets them know that they can float.
You can float. Thank you, Joan.
Thanks for having me.